In this video, we're going to be solving a proportion problem. Okay, so we have these two proportions. They're related to each other. See, we've been able to equate them. We've been able to set them equal to each other. Because we know this, because we know they equate to each other or they're equal to each other, we can solve for an unknown in one of them, okay? Because they're proportionate to each other. They're proportions of each other. Okay. So what does this mean? What are we trying to do when we see a problem like this, which is really what the question is, right? What do we do with this? How do we solve it? Basically, all we need to do is isolate for this x and find out what number value this x is equal to, okay? Once we know that, we've solved the problem. We've solved our proportion, okay? So it doesn't sound too complicated. When we first look at it, it looks complicated. It's not necessarily a type of problem we've seen before, but it's not too bad on how we solve it. There is a trick we can do. It's no different than the way we would normally solve a problem like this, but essentially what we can do is we can do two steps in one. Okay, so I'm going to explain it. We're going to do the trick. Okay, you don't need to do the trick. If you want, you can just follow simple order of operations to solve a problem. Okay, because that's essentially that's what we're doing. But this trick, what it means is when we have two proportions like this, they're written in their fractional form, so they're written as fractions, we can cross multiply. What that means is we take the denominator on our left-hand side, multiply it by the numerator on the right-hand side, and we take that answer and we leave it on the right-hand side. And when we do the same thing, we take the numerator of our left-hand side, multiply it by the denominator of our right-hand side, and we put that answer on our left-hand side. Okay? So if you think about it with order of operations, right? We would want to, multiply both sides by x to get the x out of the denominator. Then we want to get this 7 out of the denominator over here, so we'd have to multiply both sides by 7. We're doing the same thing, okay? We're just, instead of doing two separate steps, we're just going to do one single step, and then we can further reduce, okay? If you're not comfortable cross-multiplying, you don't have to do it, okay? You can just simply follow your order of operations, take your unknown. You don't want it in the denominator. You want to make sure it's in a numerator. And then you want to further reduce it, simplify it so it's all by itself, preferably on the left-hand side of your equation. But in all honesty, it does not matter what side it ends up on, as long as the x is by itself and it's equal to some number. Okay, so let's go ahead. Where I'm going to show you the cross multiplication, how I just explained it. So I'm going to put my equal sign down, because I still need that. Let's start with our left-hand side. So we're going to take our numerator on our left-hand side, and we're going to multiply that by our denominator from our right-hand side. So 7 times 7, and that is just going to, let's just write that out. We're going to write 7 times 7, okay? Now, let's do the same thing for our right-hand side. We're going to take our numerator from our right-hand side, which is 8, and we're going to multiply that by our denominator on our left-hand side, which is x. Now we can simplify. 7 times 7 is simply 49, and 8 times x is just 8x. Now, remember what I said. The sole thing we're trying to do here is solve for x. So we need to get x by itself. It's still not by itself, right? There's this 8 in front of it. So in order to get rid of this 8, we know that this 8 is multiplied by the x, right? So if we divide 8x by 8, that will get rid of the 8 from in front of the x. But we can't just do that on one side, okay? We can't just decide we want to divide one side of our equation. We need, whatever we do to one side, we got to do it to both sides, okay? So we're going to divide the right-hand side by 8. We got to divide the left-hand side also by 8, okay? So now let's simplify. Well, the left-hand side, we can't simplify. It's just 49 over 8. And then on our right-hand side, 8 divided by 8 is just 1. So 1 times x is just x. And we solve for x. Now, in math convention, which is just the way that we do things in math, when we solve for a variable, x, y, m, it doesn't matter what letter it is, we prefer if that variable is on the left-hand side of the equation. And the answer, whatever it's equal to, is on the right-hand side. It doesn't matter. The answer is the same. Nothing changes. But what I'm going to do is I am going to rewrite it so that my variable, my x, is on the left-hand side. But all we're doing is we're switching both sides. We're just swapping them. So no signs are going to change. Nothing is going to change except we're simply going to take our right-hand side x. We're going to rewrite that. Now it's on the left-hand side. We're going to write our equal sign. And then we're going to take our left-hand side. We're just going to rewrite that on our right-hand side. Okay? Because we just completely switched our left and right. That's all we did. We just completely switched them. There were no extra multiplications, no divisions, no additions, no subtractions. We did not do any operations. All we did was switch. We don't have to change anything about them. We're just literally taking the right, putting it on the left, and the left, putting it on the right. Okay? Now, as you can see, it didn't change the answer, right? X is still equal to 49 over 8, which is our answer. Okay? If you left your answer like this before we switched it, it's still correct. Okay? Now, sometimes teachers or on exams or whatever, you'll notice that the X is always on the left-hand side. Okay? That is a preference in math. But the answer is still the same as we can see. Okay? Nothing changed about it. All right? And that's it. When we're solving a proportion where we have an unknown, in this case an X, all we're doing is solving for that variable. That's all we're doing. So we want the x isolated by itself on one side, preferably the left-hand side of our equation, and then all of our other terms, as simplified as they can get, over onto the right-hand side. So in this case, our answer is simply x equals 49 over 8. If you would like to learn how to quickly study for your GED exam online and get a new resume, then visit testprepskills.com.